Julian Thorne sat in the silence of his own creation. The restaurant was called Laura. It was all chrome and shadow, a place where money came to whisper. Every fork was polished to a mirror sheen, every glass was crystal, every plate was a stark white canvas. It was perfect. It was empty. He liked it this way after hours. Just him, the lingering scent of exorbitant meals, and the ghost of another failure. On the table before him sat a single, untouched plate. A deconstructed bouillabaisse. It looked like a science experiment. It tasted of ambition and nothing else. He pressed a small, silver button on the underside of the table. The sound it made was softer than a sigh. Leo, his man, appeared from the shadows. He moved like them, a part of the darkness that always clung to Julian. Leo was built of quiet loyalty and thick muscle, his expression permanently neutral. "Sir," Leo said. His voice was gravel. "Number 47, Julian said, not looking up from the plate. "He is finished." Leo did not react. He had heard the same sentence, with only the number changed, many times before. 47 chefs in 2 years. It was a record of some kind. A monument to his boss's impossible standards. "He tried too hard," Julian continued, his voice a low rumble. "He wanted to impress me with technique. He thought the price of the saffron would be enough." Julian finally looked up, his eyes 2 chips of ice. He forgot that food is meant to be eaten, not admired. "I will see him out," Leo said. "Pay him for 2 months. And tell him to never work in this city again. I do not want to taste his disappointment in another man's restaurant." Leo nodded. A command was a command. He turned to leave. "And Leo," Julian called out. "Find me number 48. Leo paused at the door. "We are running out of chefs, sir. The agencies are hesitant to send anyone else. The story is well known." "I am not asking for a story," Julian said, his voice dropping, taking on the edge that made men twice his size tremble. "I am asking for a chef. Find 1 inch." "Yes, sir." The door clicked shut, and Julian was alone again. He stared at the offensive plate. All style. No substance. No heart. They were all the same, these culinary artists. They cooked with their egos, not their hands. They sought stars and accolades, forgetting the simple, brutal truth of their craft. Food was memory. Food was comfort. Food was the only thing that could, for a fleeting moment, bring back the dead. He ran a hand over his face. The lines there were deep, carved by years of decisions that had nothing to do with menus or wine pairings. He was a powerful man. A feared man. He owned this building, this block, and much of the unseen architecture that held the city together. He could make a phone call and end a man's career or his life. But he could not find a single person in this world who could make a simple bowl of soup. He remembered his mother's kitchen. It smelled of garlic and dried herbs, of simmering stock and baking bread. There was no chrome, only warm wood. No silence, only the sound of her humming and the gentle bubbling of a pot on the stove. That was what he was searching for. Not the taste, not exactly. But the feeling. The feeling of being safe. The feeling of being home. A feeling he had not known in 40 years. He pushed the plate away, the sound scraping against the silence. 47 failures. Maybe Leo was right. Maybe he was asking for the impossible. Maybe he was just a lonely old man, chasing a ghost in a pot. Number 48 arrived 3 days later. She was not what he expected. Her name was Ilara. She was young, her face pale and drawn with a weariness that didn't match her years. Her chef's whites were clean but frayed at the cuffs, a size too big for her slender frame. She did not carry the swagger of a head chef. She carried the quiet desperation of someone with no other options. Leo had been blunt. She has no Michelin experience. She worked in a small bistro downtown that went under. Her references are decent. She says she cooks honest food. She is all that was available. Julian had simply grunted his approval. He was tired of arrogance. Perhaps desperation would be a more effective ingredient. He watched her from the small office that overlooked the kitchen. A one-way mirror, his window into the heart of his operation. She moved with a quiet efficiency, her movements not flashy but deliberate. She did not bark orders at the other kitchen staff. She asked. She said please. They respected it. They moved a little faster for her. For a week, he let her cook. The food was fine. It was technically sound. It was seasoned correctly. It was presented without excessive flair. A perfectly seared scallop. A roasted chicken with crisp skin. A risotto that was creamy and cooked through. It was good food. It was not what he wanted. There was no memory in it. No soul. It was competent, but it did not speak to him. It was just another meal. Another disappointment. On the 5th day, he decided it was over. He would let her finish the week, pay her generously, and tell Leo to start the search for number 49. His strange, private quest would continue. He sat in his main office, away from the restaurant, a vast room of mahogany and leather. On his desk, next to stacks of documents that spoke of his other, less savory businesses, was a single, silver-framed photograph. A woman with dark, kind eyes and a gentle smile. His mother. He was staring at it, lost in a past he could barely touch, when a soft knock came at the door. Leo entered. Sir. The new chef. Ilara. She is asking to see you. Julian frowned. This was a breach of protocol. A serious one. No chef ever came to this office. They were ingredients in his restaurant, not colleagues. Why? Julian's voice was cold. She would not say. She insisted. She has a tray. Curiosity, a rare visitor, stirred in him. It was better than the familiar ache of disappointment. Send her in. Ilara entered the room. She looked small and out of place, a sparrow in a lion's den. She held a simple wooden tray. On it was a steaming earthenware bowl, a piece of dark, crusty bread, and a spoon. Nothing else. She walked to his desk and placed the tray down gently. She did not meet his eyes. She looked at the photograph of his mother. I know the food has not been to your liking, Mr. Thorne, she said, her voice soft but clear. I know I am to be dismissed. I have seen the way you look after a meal. It is the same look my father had after my mother, after she was gone. Julian remained silent, his face an unreadable mask of stone. But inside, something shifted. She finally looked at him, and he saw not fear in her eyes, but a deep, profound empathy. It was jarring. You are not looking for fancy food, she said, more a statement than a question. You are looking for a memory. I see you look at her picture. I think you are hungry for something that is no longer here. She gestured to the bowl. The steam rising from it carried a simple, earthy aroma. Lentils. Rosemary. A hint of garlic. This is my mother's soup, she said quietly. It is all I have of her. When things are hard, I make it. It is not on any menu. It is not worth $50 a bowl. But it has helped me through difficult times. I thought, maybe, it could help you too. She bowed her head slightly. I will pack my knives now. Thank you for the opportunity. She turned to leave. Wait, Julian's voice was hoarse. She stopped, her back to him. He looked from her, to the bowl, to the picture of his mother. The woman in the photo had made a soup that smelled just like that. In a kitchen that was warm and filled with light. Before the world turned to chrome and shadow. He picked up the spoon. His hand, a hand that had signed contracts and ended disputes with brutal finality, trembled slightly. He took a spoonful of the soup. And the world fell away. It was not just a taste. It was a key. It unlocked a door in his mind that had been rusted shut for decades. He was 7 years old. He had fallen from a tree, his knee scraped raw and bleeding. He was crying, not from the pain, but from the fear. His mother had scooped him up, her arms strong and safe around him. She had cleaned his wound, kissed his forehead, and sat him at the worn wooden table in her kitchen. A brave soldier needs his rations, she had said, her voice the softest thing in the world. She had placed a bowl in front of him. The same earthenware bowl. The same earthy smell. Lentil soup. He had eaten it, the warmth spreading through him, chasing away the cold fear. It tasted of safety. It tasted of love. It tasted of a life so completely, so irrevocably gone, that the memory of it was a physical blow. Julian Thorne, the man who never showed emotion, the man whose face was a fortress, felt a single, hot tear trace a path down his cheek. He did not wipe it away. He was not aware of it. He was back in the kitchen. He could hear his mother humming. He took another spoonful. And another. He ate the entire bowl, scraping the bottom with his spoon. He broke the bread and soaked up the last of the broth. He did it all in a profound, reverent silence. When he was done, he placed the spoon down. The sound was unnaturally loud in the quiet room. Ilara was still standing by the door, her back to him. She had not moved. "You are not fired," Julian said. The words felt strange in his mouth. She turned slowly, her eyes wide with surprise. "I don't understand," she whispered. "From now on," Julian said, his voice gaining its familiar authority, but with an undercurrent she had never heard before, a softness that was almost startling, "you will cook only for me. You will not work in the restaurant. Your station is a private kitchen I will have built for you. Your only job is to make this soup. And anything else you think I need to eat." He looked at her, truly looked at her, for the first time. He saw the exhaustion, the worry etched into the lines around her eyes. This was not just a chef. This was a woman carrying a heavy burden. "What is it you need?" he asked, the question abrupt. "So, you said you make this soup when things are hard. Why are things hard for you, Ilara?" She hesitated, twisting her hands in her apron. He was not a man you confided in. He was a man you feared. But he had just shown her a glimpse of something else, a vulnerability so profound it seemed to change the very air in the room. "My son," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "He is sick. The doctors, the treatments are very expensive." The bistro closing was difficult. Julian nodded slowly. He understood money, and the lack of it. It was the language the world spoke, the lever that moved everything. He had built his empire on that understanding. "What is your son's name?" "Leo." "His name is Leo." Julian's eyes flickered for a moment. The same name as his most trusted man. A strange coincidence. Or perhaps something else. "You will be paid triple your current salary," Julian stated. It was not an offer. It was a fact. "A car will be sent for you each day. You will report only to me. All of your son's medical bills are to be sent to my office. They will be taken care of. All of them. Is that understood?" Ilara stared at him, her mouth slightly open. Tears welled in her eyes, but these were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of shock, of a relief so immense it was painful. "But why?" she stammered. "I don't. I can't." Julian looked at the empty bowl on his desk, then at the photograph of his mother. "You gave me something that money cannot buy," he said, his voice quiet. "So I am giving you something that it can." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city he owned. It was a jungle of glass and steel, filled with predators and prey. He was the apex predator. But even he had once been small, and scared, and in need of comfort. "Go home to your son," he said, he's back to her. "A car is waiting downstairs. I will see you tomorrow." He heard her whisper a thank you, a sound thick with emotion, and then the soft click of the door closing. He was alone again. But for the first time in a very, very long time, the silence did not feel empty. It felt peaceful. The arrangement worked perfectly for 3 months. A new, state-of-the-art private kitchen was installed adjacent to his office penthouse. Every day, Elara would arrive, and every day she would cook for him. Sometimes it was the lentil soup. Other times, it was a simple stew, or a shepherd's pie, or roasted vegetables. Food from a forgotten world. Food that healed. Julian found himself changing. The hard edges of his personality began to soften, if only slightly. He spoke more with Leo, his lieutenant, about things other than business. He found he was sleeping through the night, not waking from the same recurring nightmares of loss and violence. Elara, too, was transformed. The constant, grinding worry was gone from her face. She smiled more. She talked about her son, Leo, whose condition was improving dramatically with the new treatments paid for by Julian's anonymous foundation. She brought in drawings her son had made for him. A slightly lopsided car. A wobbly stick figure he had labeled a Mr. Thorne. Julian take the drawings to the wall of his mahogany office, right next to a priceless painting. His lieutenant, Leo, watched all of this with a quiet, baffled concern. "Sir," he said one evening, after Elara had left for the day. "A word, if I may." "Speak," Julian said, savoring the last bite of a simple apple crumble. "This situation, with the chef. It is unusual." "It is," Julian agreed. "It is making you visible. People in our world notice patterns. A new chef, given a private kitchen, paid a fortune. Her son's medical history suddenly cleared by an anonymous benefactor. Men like Marcus Vance, they notice these things. They see it as a loose thread. A weakness. Marcus Vance. The name hung in the air like poison. Vance was Julian's primary rival. A man with the ambition of a king but the honor of a snake. Vance operated without a code. He dealt in human misery, saw people as pawns, and believed compassion was a fatal flaw. "Vance is a dog who barks at every passing car," Julian said dismissively. "He is not a concern." "With respect, sir," Leo pressed, his loyalty overriding his caution. "A dog can still bite. And he will aim for where he thinks you are softest. This woman, she and her boy have become that spot." Julian put his spoon down. He looked at the drawing of the stick figure on his wall. He thought of the quiet peace Elara brought into his sterile world. He thought of the soup. "Then we will pull the dog's teeth," Julian said, his voice turning to steel. "Let me worry about Marcus Vance. Your job is to ensure Elara and her son are safe. Double the security on her apartment. Have a car shadow her. No one gets near them. No 1 inch." "It's already done, sir," Leo said. "I took the liberty." Julian gave a rare, thin smile. "This is why you are my right hand, Leo." But Leo's warning proved prophetic. A week later, the call came. It was late. Julian was in his office, reviewing shipping manifests that listed cargo far more valuable than spices or produce. The private line, the one only a handful of people had, buzzed. It was Leo. His voice was tight, strained. "Sir. There's a problem. At Elara's." Julian was on his feet in an instant. The soft, contemplative man was gone. The predator was back. "What happened?" "My men at her apartment building were neutralized. Anesthetic darts. Professional. They just woke up. She's not answering her phone. The door to her apartment is unlocked." Ice flooded Julian's veins. "The boy? He's there. Asleep in his bed. Unharmed. But there's a note on his pillow. And Elara is gone." Julian's knuckles were white as he gripped the phone. "What does the note say?" Leo's voice was grim. It says, "The soup is off the menu. If you want the chef back, you will cede the Port Authority contracts. You have 24 hours. No police." It was not signed. It did not need to be. Marcus Vance. He had crossed a line. A line Julian had spent a lifetime enforcing. In their world, there were rules. Savage, bloody rules, but rules nonetheless. You did not touch family. You did not involve innocence. It was the one piece of honor that separated them from common animals. Vance had just spat on that rule. He had taken a woman whose only crime was making a good soup. He had left her sick child alone as a piece of leverage. "Where are you, Leo?" Julian's voice was dangerously calm. "With the boy. He's still asleep. I have 4 men here. The place is a fortress now." "Good. Stay there. Do not let that child out of your sight. I am on my way." He hung up the phone. For a long moment, he stood in the silent office. He looked at the drawing on the wall. The stick figure. He looked at the photo of his mother. He had built this empire to protect himself from the pain of that loss. He had used fear and power as a shield, keeping the world at arm's length. And now, a simple cook and her sick son had slipped past those defenses. Vance thought he had found Julian's weakness. He was wrong. He had not found a weakness. He had found a reason. He had reminded Julian Thorne exactly who he was, and what he was capable of when his protection was invoked. Julian walked to a heavy mahogany bookshelf. He ran his hand along the spines of leather-bound classics. He stopped at a worn copy of The Count of Monte Cristo. He pulled it, and a section of the wall slid open with a whisper of hydraulics, revealing a vault. Inside was not money or gold. It was a weapon rack. It was body armor. It was the tools of his old trade. A life he had tried to leave behind, a life he had thought he was too old for. He opened a drawer and pulled out a satellite phone. He dialed a number from memory. A voice answered on the first ring. "It's been a long time, Julian. I need a team, Mikhail. The old team. An extraction. Non-negotiable. For you? Anything. When and where?" "Now," Julian said, his voice the sound of a closing casket. "And we're going hunting." He was not just going to get Ilara back. He was going to erase Marcus Vance from the world. He was going to teach him, in his final moments, what happens when you threaten a man's family. Because in his own quiet, unexpected way, that is what Ilara and her boy had become. The plan was simple. Brutal. Efficient. There would be no negotiation. Julian would not cede the port contracts. To do so would be a sign of weakness, an invitation for every other shark in the water to take a bite. More importantly, it would be a transaction. It would place a value on Ilara's life, as if she were a commodity to be bought and sold. She was not a commodity. She was the woman who had brought his mother back to him, for a few precious moments, in a bowl of soup. That was a debt that could not be repaid with money or power. It could only be repaid with loyalty. With protection. With righteous, cleansing violence. Mikhail and his team were the best. They were ghosts, men who moved through the city's underbelly without leaving a trace. They were not Julian's regular enforcers, they were specialists, scalpels to the sledgehammers he usually employed. Within 2 hours, they had what they needed. Vance was arrogant. He believed Julian was an old man, softened by his legitimate businesses. He thought his threat was absolute. So he was sloppy. He was holding Ilara at one of his warehouses down by the docks, the very territory he was trying to claim. It was a statement. A foolish one. Julian stood with Mikhail and 2 others in the back of a black, unmarked utility van. The city light streaked past the tinted windows. He was not wearing one of his $1,000 suits. He was in black tactical gear, the body armor feeling unnervingly familiar against his chest. He was older now, but the weight of it was comforting. It was a promise. Vance has a dozen men inside, Mikhail said, his voice a low, accented rumble. He pointed to a set of digital blueprints on a tablet. 2 at the front entrance, 2 at the rear. A patrol of 2 circles the perimeter. The rest are inside, likely close to the target. Standard layout. Main floor is for shipping. Offices on the 2nd floor. He'll be holding her up there. He will want to be comfortable, Julian said. He will be in his own office. My men will disable the perimeter patrol and the guards at the entrances. Silent takedowns. We give you a 5-minute window before they realize the guards are offline. You and I go in through the side maintenance door. We go up the stairs. We clear the 2nd floor. You get the woman. We get Vance. Julian shook his head. A change of plan. Mikhail raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He knew Julian. Plans were fluid. The objective was not. Your men do exactly as you said, Julian instructed. They create the window. But you and I go in alone. Your men secure the exits. No one leaves that building. No 1 inch. Just the 2 of us. Mikhail asked, a hint of concern in his voice. Against 6, maybe 8 men upstairs? We are good, Julian, but we are not young. Vance's men are thugs. They are loyal to his money, not to him. They will fold when they see what is coming, Julian said. And I want Vance for myself. This is personal. Mikhail studied Julian's face in the dim light of the van. He saw the ice in his eyes, the hard set of his jaw. This was not the semi-retired businessman he had spoken to on the phone. This was the man he had once followed into unwinnable fights, and won. As you wish, Mikhail nodded. It will be like old times. The van rolled to a stop in a dark alley a block from the warehouse. The air was cold and smelled of salt and decay. Window opens in 3 minutes, one of Mikhail's men whispered through the comms. Julian checked the pistol holstered at his side. He chambered around. The sound was a definitive click. A full stop at the end of a sentence. Comms check, Mikhail said. Loud and clear, Julian replied, fitting the earpiece. They moved from the van, 2 shadows detaching from the greater darkness. They flowed through the alleyways, their footsteps making no sound on the cracked pavement. They reached the side of the warehouse, a large, corrugated metal box squatting in the gloom. Perimeter patrol is down, the voice in Julian's ear reported. They waited. The second stretched into an eternity. Front and rear guards are neutralized. Your window is open. Go. Mikhail used a small, specialized tool on the maintenance door lock. It opened with a soft snick. They slipped inside. The warehouse was vast and cavernous, filled with crates and the smell of machine oil. Motes of dust danced in the few beams of light cutting through the grime-caked windows high above. They could hear the low murmur of voices and laughter from the 2nd floor offices. They moved toward the metal staircase at the far end of the warehouse, their movement synchronized, a deadly ballet they had perfected years ago. At the top of the stairs, a single guard stood leaning against the wall, looking bored. He never saw them coming. Mikhail was a blur of motion, and the guard slumped to the ground without a sound. They were on the 2nd floor. A long hallway with several doors. The main office was at the end. Julian held up a hand. He could hear Vance's voice clearly now. Arrogant. Loud. He's getting old, Vance was saying, his voice carrying through the door. Did you see his face when he tasted that soup? Like a lost little boy. This is too easy. By tomorrow, the ports are mine, and the old lion will be declawed. Julian's face was granite. He looked at Mikhail and nodded. Mikhail kicked the door open. It flew from its hinges, slamming against the interior wall with a sound like a thunderclap. For a moment, the scene was a frozen tableau. Vance was behind a large metal desk, a smug look on his face. 4 of his men were scattered around the room, 2 playing cards, two watching a small television. And in the corner, tied to a chair, was Ilara. Her face was bruised, her eyes wide with terror. The smug look on Vance's face evaporated, replaced by pure, undiluted shock. His men fumbled for their weapons. They were too slow. Julian and Mikhail moved with a terrifying economy of motion. It was not a firefight. It was an execution. 2 precise shots from Julian's suppressed pistol, 2 from Mikhail's. The 4 thugs fell where they stood. Silence descended, broken only by the clatter of a dropped gun and Ilara's ragged gasp. Vance stared, his mouth agape. He looked from his fallen men to Julian, who was now walking slowly toward him, the pistol held loosely at his side, but ready. "Thorn," Vance stammered, his bravado gone. This is not how this is done. We negotiate. We make deals." Julian did not stop until he was standing directly in front of the desk. He looked past Vance, his eyes locking with Ilara's. He gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod. "A promise. You are safe now." Then he turned his icy gaze back to Vance. "You are mistaken," Julian said, his voice a low, chilling whisper. "You and I do not make deals. Men like me, we have a code. We have rules. We may be monsters, but we are not animals. We do not bring the innocent into our world. We do not threaten children." Vance started to sweat. "She's just a cook, Thorn." "It was business." "She is a woman who works for me," Julian corrected him. "She is under my protection. Her son is under my protection. You took her from her child. You put your hands on her," he gestured to the bruise on her cheek. "For that, there is no negotiation." Julian raised his pistol, aiming it not at Vance's head, but at his knee. "This is for her fear," he said, and fired. Vance screamed, a high, piercing sound as his leg shattered. He collapsed in his chair. Julian moved around the desk. He looked down at the pathetic, writhing man. "Her name is Ilara," Julian said, his voice devoid of all emotion. "Her son's name is Leo. He is 6 years old. He likes to draw cars. She makes a lentil soup that reminds me of my mother. These are the things you should have learned before you decided to touch what was mine." He leaned in close. "This is not business, Marcus. This is a lesson. And your tuition is due." Mikhail was already at Ilara's side, cutting her free. He helped her to her feet, shielding her from the sight of what was to come. "Get her out of here," Julian ordered without looking away from Vance. "Take her to the car. Then tell your men the building is closed for business. Permanently." Mikhail nodded and guided the trembling Ilara out of the room. Julian was alone with Marcus Vance. "Please, Julian," Vance sobbed, clutching his ruined leg. "Anything. I'll give you anything." Julian looked at the man on the floor, a man who had built his own empire on cruelty and fear, now reduced to a begging child. He felt nothing. No pity. No anger. Just a cold, final sense of purpose. "The world is a better place without men who have no honor," Julian said softly. He raised the pistol one last time. The sound was a whisper that was swallowed by the cavernous warehouse. Julian walked out of the office and did not look back. The matter of Marcus Vance was concluded. The threat was permanently closed. He would not be bothering anyone ever again. In the back of the van, Ilara was wrapped in a thick blanket, sipping from a flask of brandy Mikhail had given her. She was still trembling, but the terror in her eyes was slowly being replaced by a dawning sense of disbelief. Julian climbed in and sat opposite her. He said nothing. He simply watched her, his expression unreadable. The van began to move, pulling away from the silent warehouse and back into the city's embrace. Finally, Ilara spoke, her voice a raw whisper. "My son. Leo. He is safe," Julian said immediately. "He is with my Leo. He never woke up. He knows nothing of this." Relief washed over her face so completely it was as if a physical weight had been lifted. She began to cry, silent tears of catharsis. They drove in silence for several minutes. "Who are you?" she finally asked, looking at the man in black tactical gear, the man who had just dismantled a room full of armed men with chilling precision. "What are you?" Julian considered the question. He looked down at his hands. These were the hands that had held a spoonful of her soup, and the hands that had just ended a man's life. They were the same hands. "Tonight," he said, his voice quiet. "I was the man you needed me to be." He reached into a pouch on his vest and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a check. He had written it before he'd left his office. He handed it to her. She unfolded it. The number written on it made her gasp. It was enough money to live on for the rest of her life. Enough to ensure her son would never want for anything. "I don't understand," she whispered, looking from the check to his face. "You are a good mother, Ilara. You have a good heart. This world," he gestured vaguely to the city outside, "is not a place for people like you. This money will give you and your son a new start. Anywhere you want to go. A place where there are no shadows." She shook her head, trying to hand the check back to him. "No. I can't. This is too much." The soup, it was just soup. Julian gently pushed her hand, and the check, back toward her. "It was never about the soup," he said. "And it was never about the money. You reminded me of something I thought I had lost forever. That is a priceless gift. Consider this a poor attempt at repayment." He paused, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, simple business card. It was blank except for a single phone number. "This is my private number," he said, placing it in her hand with the check. "If you ever need anything, for the rest of your life, you call this number. It does not matter where you are or what time it is. I will answer. You and your son are under my protection. Always. That is my promise." She looked down at the card, then back up at him. The question was still in her eyes. The one he hadn't truly answered. "Are you a good man, Mr. Thorne?" she asked, her voice filled with a genuine, innocent curiosity. Julian Thorne met her gaze. He thought of the bodies in the warehouse. He thought of the empire he commanded. He thought of the fear his name inspired in 100 dark corners of the city. Then he thought of a little boy sleeping safely in his bed, and the comforting warmth of a simple lentil soup. "No," he said, his voice heavy with the truth of a long and complicated life. "I am not a good man." He let the silence hang for a moment. "But tonight," he added, his voice softening. "Tonight, I got to be." The van pulled up to a discreet, luxury hotel. Leo, his lieutenant, was waiting at the entrance. "I have a suite for you and the boy," Julian said to Ilara. "Leo will take you up. You will be safe there until you decide where you want to go. All your things from the apartment have already been moved." She could only nod, overwhelmed. She clutched the check and the card to her chest as if they were holy relics. As Leo helped her out of the van, she turned back one last time. "Thank you, Julian," she said. It was the first time she had used his first name. He simply nodded in return. He watched as she and Leo disappeared into the hotel lobby. He was alone again in the back of the van, the smell of cordite faintly clinging to his clothes. The city light seemed colder now. He had given her a way out. A new life. It was the right thing to do. But as the van pulled away, a profound and unexpected sense of loss settled over him. He had rid his world of a dangerous rival. He had protected the innocent. He had acted with honor. And he had ensured he would never taste his mother's soup again. It was a fair trade. He knew it was. But it left him feeling older and more alone than ever before. 5 years passed. Julian Thorne grew older. The ice in his eyes thawed a little, replaced by a quiet melancholy. His empire continued to run, a well-oiled machine of fear and finance, but he took a step back from the daily operations. He spent more time in his office, the one that overlooked the city. The one that was now more of a sanctuary than a command center. He never hired another personal chef. The state-of-the-art kitchen he had built for Ilara sat empty and silent, a monument to a brief period of warmth. He ate the food from his restaurant again, but it all tasted like ashes. He was no longer searching for anything. He had found it, and he had let it go. One wall of his office had changed. The priceless painting was gone, moved to a gallery. In its place, there were now half a dozen framed drawings. They were childish, colorful, and full of life. A drawing of a house with a big sun. A drawing of a dog. A drawing of a smiling woman holding hands with a little boy. And a drawing of a wobbly stick figure with grey hair, labeled a Mr. Julian. Every few months, a package would arrive from a small, sunny town in a different state. It would contain a new drawing and a short, handwritten letter from Ilara. She wrote about her life. She had opened a small bakery that was beloved by the town. Her son, Leo, was healthy and happy. He was at the top of his class. He was playing soccer. He still asked about the kind man who had helped them. Julian read every letter and carefully framed every new drawing. They were his most prized possessions. The business card he had given her was never used. He knew it never would be. She had found her peace, far from his world of shadows. One afternoon, his lieutenant, Leo, entered the office. He was older too, his hair now streaked with grey, but his loyalty was as constant as the northern star. He placed a small, insulated container on Julian's desk. "A delivery arrived, sir." From her. Julian looked at the container. He opened it slowly. The familiar, earthy scent of lentils and rosemary filled the room. Inside was a bowl of soup, still warm. Attached to it was a small note, written in a child's careful handwriting. For Mr. Julian. Get well soon. Love, Leo. Julian looked at his lieutenant, confused. Get well soon? I am not sick. Leo smiled, a rare and genuine thing. She called me, sir. Not on your private line, but at the office. She said she felt you might be feeling lonely. She said this soup was good for that. Julian stared at the soup. He thought of the woman hundreds of miles away, a woman who had no reason to think of him, but did. He thought of the healthy young boy who remembered him in his drawings. He had pushed them away for their own safety, creating a distance he thought was necessary. But he saw now that some connections are not so easily broken. Kindness, once given, has a way of returning. He picked up the spoon that was packed with the bowl. He took a bite. It tasted of home. In a world built on power and fear, a world he had mastered, he learned the ultimate lesson from a humble chef and her simple recipe. True strength was not in the walls you build to keep others out, but in the doors you open to let them in. It was not found in the fear you command, but in the loyalty you inspire. And sometimes, the most profound act of redemption, the one that can save a man's soul, does not begin with a bang, but with the quiet, comforting simmer of a pot of soup. It was a legacy of kindness, a memory served warm, and it was more than enough.